All right, so I got the plate thing welded up the two holes that didn't line up for the screws for the trim ring. So I ended up welding them up and then grinding it down, and then I screwed the trim ring on and then went in and marked the holes with the end of a bigger drill bit that fit down in the hole of the ring. Put a little indent in it and then swapped out to my drill bit for the tap, and tapped it to drilled it and tapped it to 832. So now all the little countersink stainless Allens are in there, and it looks pretty cool, which I'll have to pull it back off to put the boot on. There is a boot that goes on the shifter handle here, and then it has to go up underneath the trim ring all the way around. So this will have a black boot over it. I can tell you what I don't like. This is chrome, and this is brushed. This trim ring, it's aluminum and it's brushed. So I might sand that by hand a little bit with maybe some 800 or 1000, and then buff it on my buffing wheel and make it polished so it'll look nice. I just don't like that. But I'll have to polish every one of these little stainless steel screws too to make them look good. But I just think it'd look better polished because everything on the car is chrome, you know what I mean? Anyway, I've got it marked out here. I've got to cut this part out, which all I'm going to use is a big drill bit. It looks like maybe, I don't know, half-inch drill bit. 7/16 maybe, half-inch probably. Anyway, I'll drill the ends right here with the drill bit, and then I'll take my cutoff wheel and go hole to hole, and then that way it'll have rounded ends and straight on the sides. But that's where the lever has to go through and go down at an angle. I'm going to try to do this first before I cut the side off and angle it like I talked about in the last video. And then this is where the neutral safety switch has to go, because it's no longer going to be on the column. So I've got to rewire the solenoid wire. But anyway, I'm going to drill a hole in here and put a rubber grommet on it for the two wires to come up for the neutral safety switch. That way it won't start in gear. But I'm probably going to have to drill a hole in the side here. I may do it up here. But anyway, the wires will go through a grommet down into the can here, and then out the front through a rubber grommet, and then all the way back over and up under to the column. All right, guys, Steve just left, dropped off some parts that he had ordered, and now we can get a little bit further along with it. So this is an actual Lokar transmission flexible dipstick. The one that we had put on the car before was an off-brand, and it didn't even come with this fill tube that you're supposed to have on there. I like to never got the transmission fluid in the car. I still made a mess, but I got it on there. Anyway, I'm going to be changing this out. They actually have redesigned this from the way it used to be, because I have a Lokar in my car, and my dipstick itself is gray nylon. And this is actually a braided cable, which is flexible, but it's probably more durable than the old gray nylon stuff like mine is. So what they've done is they've upgraded this probably over time. Anyway, instead of having a double O-ring unit on the bottom like mine, they have a grommet on here. And this, I think, would be a lot better anyway. You have more surface area than two O-rings. So I actually like this. If mine ever gets bad, I'm definitely going to be happy to get a replacement like that. So anyway, got the Lokar transmission dipstick for $704. This is the roller rockers he got. He found a good deal on these. This is actually Jim, the engine builder, told him about these, and it is a company, I guess, called Deep Motor. I've never heard of them. They're obviously manufactured by another company that makes them for the bigger company, because you can tell by looking at them they're identical to I can't even think of what brand that is now. But anyway, these are roller rockers, aluminum, and these are 3/8 stud, 1.5. Jim didn't want to go with 1.6 because the car's already got a pretty big cam in it. So for a stock converter and all that kind of stuff, anyway, we'll say, and power brakes and stuff. But anyway, these look nice. So my concern, I didn't ever think that these big rollers like this would actually work under a stock height valve cover, which I think is what Steve has. So I'm a little nervous about that. When you put the poly lock The Polylock's what usually makes them too tall. They stick way up out of the top of them, you know. But if it doesn't work, we're going to try some of the really thick gaskets, valve cover gaskets, try to get a little bit more height out of it. So, I mean, we'd probably get it to work, but Jim says that they'll work, so we're going off of what Jim said, you know what I mean? So, anyway, I'm pretty impressed with those. I almost want to get a set for my car, but I've got to see if it's going to work with the stock height valve cover because I'm running the old original Chevrolet scripted valve covers. And then here is the redesigned Edelbrock carburetor. This is the AVS2. So they have changed quite a few things. And I can tell you one thing I noticed immediately on this is the throttle blade. When you turn it by hand, it is so smooth. Steve's is a really rough feeling because, you know, the shafts had some dirt and stuff in it, and it's probably galled it up a little bit. But the throttle is so smooth on this thing. I had it out earlier, but anyway, this is the redesign. So it has the annular boosters, and I guess they're set down in further and all kinds of stuff. They atomize fuel. They're supposed to give super crisp throttle response. So I'm pretty excited to get that on there and try it. I've seen a lot of videos on these, but this is the first one I've ever seen in person, and this will be the first time messing with it. But it's pretty much the same as a regular Edelbrock. So the throttle geometry bracket will bolt on, and also his custom fuel line he bought will bolt on. So it'll go directly on there, and I don't have to change anything. Like, none of the linkage has to be redone. So I'm really excited. So it was just basically making the car better and better and better. You know what I mean? But anyway, pretty happy. So he came by, brought the parts. I actually had him set in the car. I put the seat up here, and I had the shifter set up in there, and I had him put his hand on it with his foot on the accelerator pedal. I wanted to make sure everything fit him, and it does fit him. And come to find out, we're the exact same height. I thought he was a little bit taller than I was, but we're about the same height, so it worked out good. So when the car's in first gear and you got your hand on the gear shifter, his arm is also bent and its elbow's not into the seat. So that's pretty good. Worked out great. So I told him how I was going to go about it, and he said do it. So I'm doing it. What else? I guess that's about it. I think that's about it. But hopefully now I can go ahead and get some videos put out, because I got my brand new fancy GoPro. So far so good. Not a big fan of it not chaptering, but I actually haven't even tested for sure if it is chaptering, because I keep turning the power off, or stopping the video before it goes over its 7, 8, or 9 minute, where it usually stops to re-chapter. But it's just safer for me that way. But it also allows ads to get put in. So it's tougher for YouTube to automatically put ads in if you just have one long video with no edits in it, no cuts in it. So it'll work out better this way anyway. Alright guys, I definitely wanted to video this. So I went back and grounded the welds down a little bit to get some of the slaggy looking stuff off. But I ended up using my MIG, and this is a nut, and this is a nut, just a long sleeve nut. But I ended up welding the top of the nut and the bottom of the nut to the stem. This goes into the carburetor. This is a carburetor stud, and Steve's air cleaner takes a countersink bolt in the top, so it has to go into this. I got a 350 engine about 12 years ago from a friend of mine that they had a carburetor stud that was too short, and it was a kit that they had bought, and it had some kind of little metal sleeve in the middle, and then there was another stud coming off the top, so it extended it with like a sleeve nut, and it ended up coming loose while they were driving, and that nut fell down into the butterflies and got down in the engine, got down in the cylinder, and it messed up the piston, and it cracked the cylinder wall. So they had to do an engine replacement because of that little $3 nut or whatever that is. So I didn't want that to happen to Steve's car, so this got welded, and then I went over and ground it so it wouldn't be, if it ever had to be removed or you try to take it off by hand, it wouldn't, cut your finger or something. But anyway, I didn't try to grind it and make it perfectly nice or anything. It's just welded on there. It's not coming off and falling down in the engine. So I just wanted to give you guys a little word of advice there, in case you have an extension, have two studs with a nut in the middle. that could separate over time while driving and a piece of that fall down into the engine, and it will do catastrophic damage to your engine. I think it bent the valve. I mean, it did some mega damage to that engine. So this is kind of different for Steve's car because he has this air cleaner and it has a countersunk deal in it here. So it takes a countersink Allen bolt. So this will screw down into the carburetor and then the bolt will go down into this. So there's no wing nut on it. All right, guys, I got a childhood friend that I've known since 1980 something, early 80s. He's here now. He texted me, he's looking for an intake manifold. He's working on a 76 Chevy square body. He's got a cracked factory cast iron intake manifold. I actually had one in my junk pile. This is it right here. So I drug it out, kind of cleaning the surfaces, running the thread tap through stuff, make sure nothing's bad on it. But anyway, he's gonna make good use of it, and I'm glad because the scrap guy was coming to get all that stuff, so that was a save. Here he is right here. This is Justin, childhood friend. I also want to say, guys, I learned this from my Uncle Wayne back when he worked in a machine shop, and I never knew it. I had one of these that I took to him and had him vat it for me. And of course this one's rotted off because it's been laying in my backyard down right here, so resting on this. There's a tin, I always called it a tray, but anyway, you need to remove these every time you go to clean your intake or blast it because it has old clumpy sludge stuff that builds up in there. So anyway, he always removed that, and has, I guess they're like brad nails, and I got them all four out, but anyway, you just put it right back on there. But it is a good idea if you're going to take your intake off, you're going to restore it, it is a good idea to take it off and clean all that sludge and dried up crump out of there. I actually want to add this in here because I hadn't experienced this since probably 1989 when I was in high school. So this is the first set of Kragers that I have ever messed with. This is what Steve wanted to give the car the classic look, and he likes the spinners, the three-prong straight style spinners. And when I was looking at these wheels at Summit for him to order, they offered two different sets. You can get a set that takes a shank lug nut, or you could get the conical seat lug nut. Well, he had rally wheels on here before that had conical seat chrome lug nuts already on them. So my idea was to get the conical seat Kragers so he wouldn't have to buy a set of lug nuts. And we just reuse his old ones. So when the Kragers came in, I went to put on his lug nuts, and they're too fat. So when you put the socket on there, they were hitting the spokes of the wheel, so it would end up, you know, scratching or chipping the chrome. So anyway, I decided to have him get the splined drive lug nuts because they're skinnier. And when those came in, they didn't go on very far. There wasn't enough thread. So I did a little bit more research and come to find out you have to have the conical seat lug nut and a shank lug nut. So if you're going to get Kragers, I would recommend getting the shank style. Anyway, he bought these lug nuts. I don't know from who. It was a brand I'd never heard of. Krager actually sells the lug nuts. I want to say they were like $80 for the set of special lug nuts for the wheels, which is dumb. But anyway, these fit down in the wheel. They're a conical seat, but they also had a shank, so they got a lot of thread in there. However, the spinners, to put these spinners on these wheels, they come with a washer and they have a Phillips screw. So you have to put these on the wheel with the wheel off the car. You have to screw them down on the back with a Phillips screwdriver. They didn't give any locking washer or anything with that screw. It's just a Phillips screw to go into that, which I don't think is very good for something for them to work loose and lose one. So I ended up putting on a star washer. I did think about putting Loctite on there, but that's where the problem came in. That's why I decided to do a star washer. When you bolt this on there, screw it on there, and it's mounted on there permanently, then you put the wheel on there, and you go to put the lug nuts on, you can't get to some of the lug nuts because the spinner spokes are in the way. So I had to use a rubber mallet and tap on this to get it down to do the other lug nuts. Now when I do a lug nut, or lug nuts on a wheel, I do a star pattern. That one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Then I go through and go all the way around. So I had to move this twice. So I don't know if these will permanently stay on. I mean, they're not moving, but I don't have much faith in something like that. I think it's kind of silly, but it'll work, you know, and it looks cool on there. Don't get me wrong. It definitely looks cool. But I'd forgot that I had the same problem back in like 1989 with one of my cars that I was driving to high school. I kept losing my spinners, and I finally got to the point where I just put regular caps back on it because I got tired of buying spinners because I kept losing them. But anyway, it looks awesome. And I do want to say, somebody had commented that they love the blue letters. And this is not blue letters. These are raised white letters. Just when you buy a raised white letter tire brand new, they put a blue coating on there. It's like a protectant. And this will have to be scrubbed off. But I've just left it on there because working on the car and stuff, you know what I mean? There's no need in taking that blue off there until the car's completely done and it gets its final detail. So it looks awesome. He's going for that classic look, you know, and those Kragers, I mean, it's timeless, man. It looks like something he would have drove back in high school. And I'm not sure what year Steve graduated. I'm sure it was probably around early 1980s, maybe 80. Let's see, my brother graduated in 82, so I would imagine that's probably, I think they're around the same age, so it's probably about when he graduated. And that's what would have been in the parking lot. That's what you would have probably seen in the parking lot at his high school back then was, you know, Tri-5 Chevys, some 60s stuff, 70s stuff, and obviously 80s. But like my brother drove a 55 to high school, a two-door post 55 with 5-slot mags. But I think it looks great. The car looks really, really awesome. And then he chose Cherry Bomb mufflers, and that is pretty much a timeless, it's a glass pack. And again, that's probably something that would have been on the car back then. So he pretty much built the car to specs of probably back in his youth. And I think that's pretty awesome. So I keep putting this off because I am just completely aggravated with this shifter crap. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and get it over with today. I need to cut a spot on the floor, but the bolts are still up underneath there, you know, sticking through. So I can't get them out. I've actually got tape on the bottom of the heads on that one over there so they would stay up, the front ones. And I had it on the bottom as well, but I pushed the bolt as hard as I could through there. But anyway, those bolts kind of fell down quite a ways, but they're hitting the transmission case. So I have to pull the cross member back out of the car and lower the transmission down a little bit to get those bolts out of there. But I need to do it anyway so I can get in there and use a cutoff wheel and cut that out. And I'm obviously not going to go deep down in the tunnel with the cutoff wheel. I'm going to keep it pretty shallow, but I'm going to get that cut out today and try to get this thing, see if it's going to work. I honestly, after sitting here messing with this and looking at stuff, I don't know that the steel bar that bolts on the side of that comes off at an angle and goes down, I still don't know if it's going to work. I, at this point, think I may just use some steel strap that's the same thickness as their bracket, and I might build my own. So I'm going to get this cut out first and get the shifter and its base set up in there and go from there. All right, so I'm getting ready to lower the transmission down. I've got to get under there and put the jack on it, take the bolts out and the cross member and all that. I need to lower the engine down in the back, just to have a little bit of room. Now this thing ain't gonna go a long ways because at one point it'll stop on the engine mounts, but because I have side engine mounts on this car. So what I did was I went ahead and unhooked the throttle linkage because I don't want this getting in a bind and, you know, bending something. Also took the cap loose, so this'll move. I don't think it'll go back that far, but there's plenty of room off the top of the fan to here, and the exhaust I've got it wired at the back, so it does have a little bit of room there, but I don't think there's anything else that's going to be a problem. So that's kind of the plan. Just kind of making sure I don't tear nothing up or break something. I don't need to be replacing something. I put a couple of tacks on this riser that I made here, and anyway, the bracket that bolts onto the side of the shifter it takes lock nuts, so I'm not going to sit there with an Allen wrench and a wrench trying to tighten that all down to check everything. So I stuck the bolts in, put the nuts on until it stopped at the nylon by hand, and then I just clamped it together. But I know it's where it needs to be because the bolts are in it and it's squished flat. So I've put it in first gear, and get out of here in the light, show you what I'm up against here. So you can see the lever hanging off, the gold lever right there. And that corner of it's touching the floorboard right there, touching the trans tunnel. So I guess I'm going to have to take it off, and I'm going to have to bend this to where the end of the bracket down there is closer to the ground. Basically, it's got too sharp of a bend in it, and I'm going to have to soften it a little bit. But man, I'm telling you, the transmission has all these things off the side of it right here. I don't know if you can see that or not. These two square pad things here and up there. And that linkage has to come down, and it's right in the way of that stuff. And I tell you what, if I got to take this transmission out of this car and grind those pads down, I'm going to be pretty mad. That one is just a mount pad, a Boss for some kind of electrical plug-in for a loom clamp is all that is. Alright guys, so I had to go in the house and chill out, we'll say. So I was pretty fired up. I'm still pretty irritated. This universal floor shifter, it's aggravating to say the least. So the linkage, I have messed with it and messed with it and messed with it, and it's still hitting the transmission. I'll climb under there and show you that here in a second. But I have been out from under this car, under it and out of it a bunch. And it is, I'll bend it one way and I'll get in there and it'll fix one end, but the other end will be a problem. And now I get to pull it back off again. So it's about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So I'm calling it, man. I'm done. I'm tired of messing with this. It's time for me to take a break and get on to something else, because this universal aftermarket overseas stuff it gets on my nerves to try to make it fit. So I've already unplugged my light, but hopefully we can see when we get in there. But I'm going to show you what I'm up against. Oh. Yeah, I think you can see it. So here's the lever coming down, this mechanical lever that comes down, and it's hitting. There's a double square step in this transmission. If I lift this up, you can see it. And this bracket's hitting that. So anyway, when I bend this, it changes the angle of where the turnbuckle bolt's on, and it changes the angle up there as well. And that up there, I've got it to exactly where I need it. I don't want that moving anymore. So I guess I'm going to have to pull it back out again, and I'm going to have to trace out the side angle, and then go in, and I'm going to have to try to bend the whole center in a really big curve, and then go back and bend these to where they actually fit my piece I've traced out. But this is a mess. These 704s have them square pads on the side, and this, you know, if this was a turbo 350 or something, it'd probably work, but this transmission's just an issue. So I tried to bend it. I've actually bent it 2 or 3 times already. But the upper area that goes into the shifter has to stay the same, because when you put the car in park, that bracket goes up to the floorboard and touches it. And there's nothing I can do about it. Like, that's as far as I can go with it. So this is a mess. This is a real mess. But if I hadn't have built that riser, you can kind of see there why I had to build the riser, because the part where it comes down up there, before, just mounted to the floor, it was on the transmission. Like, you couldn't move the shifter. So this has turned into the biggest mess. So I'm done. And it's Friday. So I'm going to take the weekend off of this thing, which I don't work on this thing on the weekends anyway. And hopefully Monday morning I'll come out a little refreshed and try to get that thing finalized. It's close. Probably just a little bit more bending and it'll work. But man, what a mess. So anyway, I ordered some ultra thick cork valve cover gaskets for this. The roller rockers are here for this engine, and Jim's going to be installing them. I'm not sure when yet. I've got to call him. I'm hoping he can come next week. But anyway, I ordered some gaskets, and I don't know if they're going to be here later this evening or tomorrow or maybe Monday or Tuesday. I don't know. But anyway, I ordered some extra thick cork gaskets for the valve covers because I am 99% sure that those roller rockers with those poly locks are not going to clear them valve covers. So anyway, I want those gaskets here so we can put it on there, because Jim lives in, man, I'm not even sure. He moved, and it's been a long time since I've been to his place. I'd say he lives pretty close to Jay, Oklahoma, and I live in Claremore, Oklahoma. That's a pretty long haul for him to drive, so I don't want him to drive all the way over here, go to put roller rockers on, and then the valve cover's not fit, and then we can't start the car. So, without making a mess of the engine. So I wanted to go ahead and just order them gaskets and have them here, but instead of, trying it and then it not working and then have to come back again. So, just kind of trying to think ahead a little bit. But guys, I've had it with that car today. I'm to the point where I'm so burnt out on this car. There's just so much universal and so much modification stuff that has had to be done. It's kind of got to me a little bit. And that's the way it is when you're building a car. And that's why that I always like having multiple projects. Some people like just one. I like several. And the main reason is when I get really frustrated or irritated with one, I've got another one that I can jump onto and be refreshed. And then when I get irritated with that one, I can work on the other one again. So I'd say it's about 3 p.m. now. It's probably actually a little bit after 3 now. And I worked on that stupid shifter all morning, man, and I'm tired of it. But my plan now is to go ahead and clean up my mess. I've got a huge mess in here. Get all this mess cleaned up, and then I kind of not sure what I'm going to do yet. I'm planning on working on the 355 this weekend, but I think I've decided to work on my chassis, so I'll just do a separate video for that. But anyway, guys, that's Steve's car up until today. Man. Thanks for watching.